much for coming out. I had way too many days off, and I don't like to hang out in a hotel room. So it's fun to have a full house here. I'm going to tell you the story about Thomas Blug and how I met him and why I'm using his amplifier. We were kind of on the same demo circuit around the planet, and I would see him at different trade shows playing amazingly well. He always sounded good, used every pickup, every configurations constantly to get the greatest tone he could. And he was a very friendly guy, so we hung out and talked guitar a little bit. I never knew he built amps. For years, I didn't know that. And I ended up having a day off in France with a friend, and he said, you know, Thomas lives just across the border, let's go visit him. I thought, well, I really don't know him that well. I felt a little uncomfortable about barging into his space, but we ended up doing it, and it was right when he finished the prototype of the Amp1. And immediately I walked in, he put a guitar in my hands and had me play through it, and I go, holy crap, how can I get one? I want one immediately. This thing is under 3 pounds, and if anybody has ever flown, every ounce makes a difference. I mean, I switched to nylon underwear just to save those ounces. The excess luggage fees I have paid in my life could have bought another house probably. And then I found out his backstory. He had worked, gosh, at this point, maybe 27 years with Hughes and Kettner, developing and designing amplifiers, and they got smaller and smaller and better. And he's a very dedicated tube guy. He also invented the Redbox direct speaker emulator systems. And it's what he has come up with. I call him the Einstein of sound, because he's just one of those guys that will sit there for 6 hours and listen to tubes. I don't have that kind of patience at all. I just want somebody else to do that and give me something I love, which happened. And I waited and waited and waited. I think it was the better part of a year, because he wanted to make sure that it was happening, and continues to tweak to this day. The Amp1 is about to release a baby. It's the new edition is called the Mercury, and he's been making little tweaks on the Amp1 throughout the years since it's been released, and now proudly will put out the Mercury, which is I'll just call it, I don't know if it's an upgrade, it's just a tweaked version of it to his ears. He's been using it on every gig he's done for the last 2 years, and here's things he wants to change, so things that most you and I would not hear, but if it makes him happy, let him tweak away. He's a brilliant guitar player, very prolific. I did a tour with him last year, and I tell you what, he's about 3 times as loud as I am, so you're welcome. He's got a ton of records out. The Amp1 essentially is a 100-watt vintage Marshall. He's collected amps and pedals. That's one thing. When I walked into his apartment, he must have had 50 pedals out, and he's the kind of guy that'll listen to them and dig them apart and see what they're about, and like a mad scientist. And I'll go through the different sections. It's got 4 channels, and it's almost all analog. The tube saturation comes from the Nano tube that's in the middle there. It has basically a spring reverb on board, as well as a gain. Here's a little closer picture of the channels. The modern that's what I kick into. I'm on tour doing a Michael Jackson tribute show with the King of Pop show, and I use the modern for the Beat It solo, because there's harmonics in that have to pop, and when they don't, I get very sad. So I kick into high gear with the modern. Classic, vintage, and the clean. And when it comes out of the box, the button, the blue one on the right, is reverb on and off, and you can choose how much you want with the knob above it. The middle one is a boost, and the left one will choose between your favorite gain channel and a clean channel. But you can also program it like I did. So I took my 3 favorite sounds, and now from left to right, mine is clean, vintage, and the modern. so I can just instantly kick into it. So you get an idea of what the Nano tube looks like. It's a little different from the tubes that you're used to. And it doesn't run as hot. It lasts 1,000 times longer. So it's soldered to the board. You don't ever need to access it. And as Thomas says, it will outlast us all. And if anybody's changed out your tubes, you know, it's a very expensive process. So I like things that are very convenient, that you don't have to maintain, you just plug them in and go. In fact, this thing is so small you put it in your purse or your man bag. It's always in my carry-on. And it improved my sound so much, because 99.9% of my gigs I have to fly to. And so everything has to fit in my suitcase. And unless I'm on a gig like Michael Jackson kind of money or Jeff Beck, everything's in the suitcase and I deal with everything myself. So my carry-on, I do a multimedia show with these films that I make. And I have a projector and a backup projector, because if one goes down, there goes the show. So I get a backup of that, a laptop and a backup laptop, and my Amp1. And also his BluBox, a speaker simulator that I'll get into a little bit later. Oh, this is broken. Do I get a discount? So it's got the standard EQ, bass, middle, treble. If anybody's tried to work with those boogie amps, there's a whole lot of ways to make it sound bad. This is pretty dumbed down. And so when you're playing a gig, and if it's a really boomy place, you can just instantly reach down and there's gonna be a global EQ. It doesn't store with the patches so that you don't have to go into each patch and say I need the bass higher. It's just boom, instant. You can change it immediately. And gain and master for the gain channel. I'm just zooming in on the middle here. Now, one thing about Thomas is, because he's a fantastic player and a gigging player, he knows what guitar players want. And light is number one. I know for myself, after I hauled around my Marshall cabinet for long enough, I had hernia surgery. After that happens, you don't want to haul light or heavy things too much anymore. So I think that was number one. He wanted to see how light he could possibly make it. And like a lot of things these days, you can go from 100 volt to 240. So 100 volt would be Japan, to 110 in America, to 240 here. And that's really cool, because I think of all the times I used to take gear around the world with like a 10-pound transformer, and several times I looked over and I see smoke, and something is not going right. So to have a universal power system is awesome. He's got an effects return and also a recording out. You can use that as a direct out. I'm using his BluBox tonight, which is an expanded version of the recording out in that. So you're hearing that combined with the mic that's on the fat cab speaker. And you can use it with headphones too if you're playing late at night and people hate you. That works out really well. Your choice of 16 ohm or 8 ohm cabinet. And something I did not know, I've learned plenty from him, is that the best situation if you're going to be doing a 412 is to go 8 ohms into a 16 ohm cabinet. You would think 8 and 8 and 16, 16, but that is very easy on the gear. And also he came up with this MIDI system that's phenomenal. It's just a regular, well, it's an addition adapter. So it's got a 1/4 inch in, but it's MIDI on the other side. I'll go over my stuff I'm using here. I have a Digitech RP1000 I'm using. And Digitech, for some reason, did not put MIDI in this. So if they did, I could just step on one preset and have it also change my amp. So now I'm doing some tap dancing where I change the amp channel and then step on the preset. And because of that, instead of jumping on the clean channel, I'll just clean up the guitar, like I did in one of the chords I went to. That's something you can't do with a processor. And I just forgot about cleaning up amps. So back to the processors, because I was jumping on planes all the time and I was doing a lot of demos for Digitech, I would take the Digitech gear along, and I kind of got used to the sound of the models. And I'd EQ them till I thought they were pretty good, but once I got the Amp1, it was like, oh, Jesus, where have I been all my life? And the sound just improved times 10, and just being able to clean up any sound with the roll of your volume is, now I can't live without that. Now the side of the amp has, you can really personalize it by tweaking and customizing each of the channels. It's got a noise gate, and the metal one obviously is for people that play on 11 all the time, and the soft one for less so. For me, I have a volume pedal here, and I've been doing that for years, where I just, between songs, I just roll it off so it's dead quiet. So I don't need to use that. The effects loop, you can go parallel or serial. It's very versatile. You can put it on your pedal board. And when I first started telling people about this, you know, I'd say it's a full head, and they'd go, so it's a preamp, right? Because it's so small. You really have to educate people, because there's nothing like this out there that has a full-on preamp and power amp in such a tiny box. So you can have your whole setup on your pedal board if you choose. I put that picture in there for the pretty colors, so you know what channel you're on. Who uses the 4-cable method here? It's kind of the latest rage. Not anybody. I'm shocked. Well, you might after today. The 4-cable method allows you to use a processor and have certain effects before the preamp and time-based effects between the preamp and the power amp. And it's, well, in the Digitech it's automated. They know which should go where. But in a lot of the things like the Helix, fractal kind of stuff, you can build your own chain, and you might put a delay in front instead of between the preamp and power amp, because you like the way it sounds. So the option is up to you. But if you're just a pedal user, you can put your whatever pedals you want in front of the amp. In fact, you could just use the clean channel only and use the distortion pedal in front of it instead of using any of the gain channels if you're used to doing that kind of thing. He also, underneath the amp, there's a recessed area that you can push -10 or +4, depending on if you have old school pedals or rack effect stuff. So he thought of everything. It's unbelievable. I'm going to intersperse all this yapping with tunes. I'm going to take you to India with this. I've been making these films for about 10 years, and I like it more than music. Making films is just fun. Tell you a little bit about the rest of the gear that I'm carrying here. This is a Washburn Parallaxe from their Parallaxe series. I've been playing short scale Gibson neck for many, many years, and so I had them do a short scale. And it's the first guitar I've ever had that's 24 fret, which I thought would be the coolest thing in the world, but I still get lost after a year. I mean, after you 3 or 4 decades with 22 frets, all of a sudden, ah! It's like jumping in the pool naked. It's way too much freedom. This thing is a string damper. This one I have Fluence pickups in. This is a Fluence Modern in the bridge, and from their Strat series single coils in the other 2 spots. Other than that, it's pretty standard. Floyd Rose 1000, tone, volume, and 5-way switching system. And one thing that's really cool, I had seen Nuno Betancourt play a million times, seen pictures of him, and thought this looked really cool in the corner of his guitar. I had no idea that what it was a really unique joint of the neck and the body. And what that does is allow you to play up to the very highest fret with no effort at all. So that's It's a interesting design. As far as the Digitech, there's a lot of sounds. I really like a lot of sounds because I usually do instrumental music and I have the attention span of a gnat, so I want to hear different things all the time. I almost always have the expression pedal set to be a whammy pedal in my solo sounds, so I can bend notes down a whole step with my foot. And one of the advantages of that is you can take a whole chord down a whole step, which you cannot do with the tremolo bar. You get one string in tune and that's it. Plus it'll be an exact whole step. You don't have to guess with the bar. And another advantage is it gives you a low D. So if you have a song that either has a couple of chords that go into D or the whole song's in the key of D, you can just take the whole guitar down. And another advantage is if you happen to be a tapper and you have two hands busy and can't get to the tremolo bar, you can still bend with your foot. You know you want one. And in the first song, here's one of my favorite sounds ever. They call dur-yaw. And I'm opening up the filter with my foot. And they claim it's a combination between a wah and a flanger, which I don't quite get. I think they just tell you that to send you off the path of what it really is. But Digitech is the only one that makes this. And I'm looking at the Boss GT1000 because it has MIDI. And it's 4 pounds lighter, but it does not have this sound. So if you know anybody that makes sounds, tell them I need this. Much more sanitary than actually putting a tube in your mouth. And here's the difference between this and the wah. And playing instrumental music, having any sound that can help be more vocal, sign me up for it. So Thomas started out with the Amp1, and then the next thing he did was to add a remote. And this is the cable I was talking about before, that it has a regular guitar jack that goes in the MIDI port and MIDI on the other side. So that we'll talk to a pedal board. And with this, you can get presets if you're really into tweaking, you know, I like the vintage one this way, but for this song, I want it to be, 2 degrees to the left. So rather than having like the standard way when you break it out of the box, you get your choice of your favorite distortion channel and clean channel, and then gain and reverb. Or in program mode, you get the choice of 3. With this, you get a ridiculous amount of choices, plus a power soak, and the master volume. So one of the advantages of this is that's all you have to have in front of you. If you want to have your amp back on top of the speaker cabinet, you can just have the pedal board and access everything. If you need a little more volume, just lean down and you're good to go. He came up with a breakout box that will port out to the side of that. And this will allow you to use your standard pedals. If you have 3 or 4 pedals that you really want to add, you can add them with that and choose which ones are live at any time. I'm having a brain fart as to when there is no extra noise. What do you call it?
Quiet?
Yes! No, when pedals, old school pedals were super noisy, and the new ones, when you're not using it, true bypass. Thank you, 10 points. This is what's under my feet right now, with the expression pedal on the right, and you'll see me, you can program the expression pedal to do anything you want to. You can go from a dry sound and have it programmed to add delay when you step on it, or reverb. You can have any program from the whammy. I usually do a whole step down, but at some point I'm going to do an octave higher, or you can do dive bomb. Anyway, this is a song called Cat Fight. Another thing this amp does is give so much more clarity than I got used to. I could take advantage of these nasty harmonics in between the frets. Now let me go into the super gnarly mode. Then of course he comes up with the cabinet. He's actually thinking about every nuance of what happens between when you pick a note and it comes out the speaker. Even the picks. I was in China with him one time. We were doing a trade show, and he gives me this highly illegal to take across the border tortoise shell pick. And he goes, "You gotta check this out. It's just one. It won't hurt. Just, you know, they won't throw you in jail for just this." But it really got me thinking about picks for the first time, because I just got used to what I liked, what was comfortable for me, and you just get used to that sound, and that's your pick. But since then, I've gone to much heavier picks and much larger picks as well. So this was the first cabinet that he designed, called the Fat Cab. And what he was trying to do, essentially, is emulate a 412 cab. And if you've ever sat in front of somebody in a club that has a 412 cab, you're probably missing some frequencies, and those little hairs in your eyes or ears are just, yeah, help me. Because it's so directional. It's like a razor blade to the people right in front of it. And you are no stranger to that. You've done that to people.
Yeah.
I did that to people with my first 412. I was in these little stages, and there's no room on stage, so you're right on top of the cabinet and it's hitting you in the butt. You don't realize what it's doing to the people in the front row. In fact, the bass player, I looked over one time and he was rolling himself up in the curtain to try to get away from my volume. The patience that he has to not just throw a speaker into a box, but to check what would it be like if you just moved it a little bit that way and ported it this way and open back as opposed to close back, and months and months and months and months of experimenting and then coming in with fresh ears every day, he came up with the Fat Cab. And it essentially has the standard Celestion greenback, which is 25 watts, but he made it much more powerful, so it's 60 watts. So he's messed with it, so it's now a BluGuitar speaker. And in the back of every speaker, he gives you the option to add another speaker and double the wattage. When I did a tour with him, he had a Fat Cab and a Nano Cab. The Nano Cab, it's very lightweight. And the magnet in the Fat Cab is a little more robust and closed back. The Nano Cab, you can see the ports on the bottom there. It really spreads the sound out to the sides. And one horrible thing about having a 412 is if you're headed right to the sound guy and you're blowing his head off, he's going to take you out of the system. So that means only the people in your line of fire are going to hear you, and people on the side are going to miss out. So with this, it's ported, and you can walk a great distance and not lose any sound. And this is his latest addition. It's a 212 cab. And he takes great pride in saying it's only 42 pounds because he hasn't had hernia surgery. And this one, you can run it stereo as well. I wanted to put this picture in because he does take his Nano Cab in a suitcase. Here's a guy that's going to wear jeans for a week, though. You know, no makeup, no glamour clothing. It's more about the sound. So he can throw it in his suitcase and have the amp right on top of it, and you get total control. Because there's nothing worse than flying and you have a gear list of this is what I need, and you get to the other side and they go, well, yeah, but we didn't have it, so here's what you get. And it can really ruin your evening. I'm going to get into one of my favorite sounds. It's kind of got, sure, it's modeled after Roland's slow gear. So you don't hear the full volume when you pick, it ramps up. And this is called In the Aftermath. Now you're hearing two sources tonight. Three, really. I mean, you're getting the live speaker behind me, and it's also mic'd, so that's coming out the PA, and you're hearing a direct signal through the BluBox. And this is a phenomenal speaker emulator with impulse response technology, and basically Thomas owns all of these. and so he did impulse response on all of them. And there's 16 different ones to choose from, which is a hell of a lot. I tend to use the Marshall 1967 exclusively. That's my favorite one. The knob on the right is a virtual mic placement knob. I wish I had a camera on your face when you did that. It's like if anybody's ever recorded at home with mics, you have the speaker in the other room, it sounds great, then you go to the room where you're recording and it sounds like crap. So you go back and forth 45 times and move the mic just a little bit and try different mics and back and forth. By the time you're happy, you don't want to play anymore. That's how it works with me. I started recording with this thing and I gave all my mics away. I don't even use mics anymore because I'm so happy with the clarity of the sound that comes from that. How I'm running it is I'm from the Amp1, I'm going speaker in. You don't need a load box. If you're using another head, you will, but not with this one. And then I have another speaker cable going through into the cabinet. Then taking a balanced mic out into the house sound. It has a ground lift on it, which I think all gear should, because eventually some club is going to have horrible buzzing and you got to have all your options of getting rid of the buzz. You can also do line in and headphone out or line out. And this thing, once again, he gave me a prototype. I was like, I want this thing now. Whatever you're inventing, I want it because I know it's going to be cool. It saved my ass about 4 or 5 times in the last 2 years when I show up and they go, oh, you need a cabinet? Well, how do you think an electric guitar is going to get into their ears? So there was no cabinet. So I broke this out and it sounded great. I mean, it's the best sounding monitoring I've gotten from an amp ever. Usually I just hate the way it sounds. A lot of the PAs, the horns are just so brittle, I just kind of face it away from me, but it's got a real great, well-rounded sound. Some of the mics that he used to do his impulse response recording, it wasn't just a 57 direct into the cone. He spent a lot of time getting this right. And like I said, he was into what kind of pick you use, with the thickness of the pick, what it's made out of. He's also spent a lot of time on a speaker wire. And this particular wire, he was checking out all these different wires, and somebody sent him a vintage Marshall, like 1962 speaker cable, and he just the cable part, so he put the ends on it and was checking it out and really A-B'd and found that he really dug it. And so he started experimenting with length. So now what he sells is 5.67 meters because 0.68 doesn't sound as good. I mean, thank God there are people like that in the world that can do that work for us, right? So I do not have the speaker cable yet. That's next on my Christmas list. Yeah, I wrote a little bit down here. It was based on a vintage Marshall cable. He measured the number of strands braided at the core. Who does that?
Thomas Blue.
Thomas Blue, yeah. He offers 2 of these. One is a super short one, but if you're going to have the amp way out front and your speaker behind you, you're going to need some more length. I know it's mind-blowing, and that's why God invented the Visa card. Just saying. This next track is, I use the most sounds of any song ever. standard bare next to nothing. Yeah, I got actually absolutely nothing but the blue coming through. And then, like I was talking about the tap dancing, because it's not MIDI, I have to change the channel manually on the Blue. I go to a neck pickup and roll back the volume for that, and pick lightly so it's as clean as I can get it. Then I get into the talk box using the expression pedal for the melody. And Kurt kind of sounds drunk when he's singing that, so I try to lay back with the melody. And then into the chorus, got an envelope filter that's responsive by the hand if you play really lightly, as opposed to smacking into it. So I really nail into it and then do unison bends as well. And then I have programmed into the expression pedal, when I step on it and it's all the way down, it adds a ring modulator. It gets super nasty. And then of course, reverse delay. And that sound, you just kind of let your fingers go, and you don't really know what's going to come back. Just the general sonic sculpture, but not really. Questions? All right. Y'all are shy here in wherever I am. All right, I'm going to do one more before I start stage diving and lighting my hair on fire. I'll save the best for last. Usually wherever I go, there's somebody with a shiny glove. Just attract those people. So here's some Michael Jackson. Thank you.
This is the most amazing sounding guitar you've ever heard in your life.